Hello, my name is Gwen and I'm a Professor of Bioengineering and Material Science at the University of Sheffield. You might know that Sheffield is a city that's very famous for engineering and manufacturing. Usually here in Sheffield, we host an exhibition where we show you different gadgets and things you can make and have competitions all about engineering called Engineering Imagination. But this year, we can't have large gatherings in the city right now. It's important that you stay close to home and stay safe. So instead, we're going to bring you a taste of engineering, a small selection of videos about engineering from the University of Sheffield. The reason we're doing this now in June is because the 23rd of June is International Women in Engineering Day. And we'd like to show you that there's lots of different kinds of engineering and that anyone and everyone can be an engineer. And engineering needs more women to get involved, and we'd like young women to think about engineering as a future job because it can be extremely interesting and enjoyable thing to do. So the first thing we'd like to do is launch our new book, Suzie and Ricky, The Ripple Effect. Some of you may have read a book called Suzie and Ricky, The Crash Landing, where Suzie and Ricky meet an alien. Well, in this new book, Suzie and Ricky are going to go to the beach. And we're going to hear about oceans and how plastic affects the oceans and what we might be able to do about it. So these books have been written by the students from our very talented Women in Engineering Society and have been illustrated by Abby Pullen. So as a special treat today, we've got somebody who used to be a student here in Sheffield called Lizzie Capassa, and she's one of the main authors of the book, and she is going to read the first chapter for you so you can listen to what the book's about, and if you'd like to read the rest, it's available to download and find out what happens next. So I'd like now to hand over to Lizzie to tell you about the first chapter of the book.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Capassa and I'm here today to read to you Suzie and Ricky, the sequel, The Ripple Effect. Chapter 1, A Trip to the Beach. As Suzie began to stir in her whale-themed duvet, she woke up with a warm, fuzzy feeling inside. She knew that today was going to be a great day because today she was going to the beach with her best friend Ricky. Her parents were taking them as a reward for working hard at school this past year. As soon as Ricky arrived, they walked straight to the train station so they could catch a train to the beach. The platform was full of other children with their parents who were holding bags stuffed with colourful beach towels and beach buckets filled with spades and sandcastle molds. It looks like everyone else had the same idea as us, Susie's dad remarked. I guess everyone wants to go to the beach today, Suzie echoed. Why didn't we just drive? Because, Susie's mum began, if everyone on this platform drove, each car would release nasty exhaust gases into the air. With so many people, that would be a lot of pollution. By taking the train, less gas is being released into the air, which is much better for the environment. Suzie and Ricky nodded in agreement as they counted down the minutes until the train would arrive. Their train journey flew by, and before they knew it, Suzie and Ricky could see the blue ocean and the waves seesawing up and down in the distance. If they looked really closely, they could make out the sand and some rock pools at the end of the beach. They ran all the way from the train station to the sandy beach. There was a little cafe with tables outside and stripy umbrellas. Susie's parents said they would lay out a picnic blanket to sit and read near there while Suzie and Ricky could explore. After applying their sunscreen, they raced each other to the rock pools they had spied from the train. Suzie and Ricky discovered that behind each rock pool there was an even bigger rock pool, so they kept walking further along the edges of them and kept pausing to look at the different plants, fish, and sea anemones. Then Ricky saw the biggest crab he had ever seen. He just had to pick it up to get a closer look. Suzie was worried because they were quite far from help and he could get a nasty pinch from one of the crab's claws. In fact, they were so far away that they could no longer see the sand or people at all, only rocks. Suddenly, they both jumped, and when a shout came from behind them, "Put him down!" Startled, the crab slipped from Ricky's grasp and fell back into the pool with a plop. How would you feel if someone just suddenly picked you up out of your home like that?" continued the person, as they slowly turned around to face the silvery voice. They saw a woman leaning over the edge of the rock pool. She was using her elbows to stay up whilst the rest of her body was hidden underwater. She pushed her salty hair over her shoulder as they both stepped forward, and Ricky stammered, I'm sorry, I didn't think he would mind. Suzie cut him off and started yelling. "Oh my," she exclaimed, while staring intently into the water, where the woman's body should have been. Are you a mermaid? Is that a tail? Is it real? Are you real?" Suzie stopped so she could catch her breath, and Ricky's jaw dropped in shock. The mysterious woman pulled herself up so that she sat perched on the edge of the pool, with her long tail floating in the water beneath her in full view. Suzie and Ricky could not stop staring at her dazzling fish-scaled tail, which was bobbing up and down with the tide. It was covered in shiny scales in shades of green, blue, and turquoise. Although they noticed there were also dark spots where a few of her scales looked almost black, as if they were diseased. "Oh, yes," the mermaid blushed, clearly not knowing what to say. "I am a mermaid, this is my tail, and you just picked up my friend." Ricky apologized, and the three of them started talking about all the different marine animals in the rock pools and the ocean. Just as Suzie was about to ask the mermaid what her name was, she noticed a seal swim up to the mermaid and start poking her with his flipper. The mermaid looked down and said, "Yes, Billy, I know I'm running late for the meeting. Tell them I'll be there soon." This seemed to satisfy the seal. He gave them a wink and a wave, then dipped back under the surface of the water. Suzie and Ricky looked at the mermaid with raised eyebrows, hoping that she would explain. "I'm sorry, but I need to go. There's a big meeting in my kingdom about the environmental issues we're facing and how we can fix them. It was nice meeting you both." And she turned to slip back into the water. "Wait," begged Suzie. "What's wrong with your environment?" She knew this was possibly the only time in her life she would ever meet a mermaid, and she did not want it to be over just yet. The mermaid sighed, looked down at her tail, and pointed to the dark spots that they had noticed earlier. "Well, it's the water," she confessed. "There are so many bad things put into the ocean now, so the water is really dirty. It is starting to become dangerous for us merpeople." Their foreheads creased with concern, whilst the mermaid continued. "You see these dark spots on my tail? Those weren't always there. They only appeared last year and will not go away. The dark spots are because of the polluted water." The mermaid looked away as her eyes went extra glossy. It looked like she was about to cry. Suzie and Ricky looked at each other, and they were both thinking the same thing. "We will help you," they vowed together confidently, as they triumphantly put their hands on their hips in a superhero pose. The mermaid lit up and blinked her tears away. "Will you really? My kingdom could really use all the help that it can get." "Of course we will," declared Ricky, smiling as he held out his hand to the mermaid. "My name is Ricky, by the way, and this is my best friend, Suzie." The mermaid shook both of their hands, and her eyes sparkled. "It's nice to meet you, Suzie and Ricky. My name is Celeste." Suzie and Ricky were very excited to have the chance to help Celeste and all the other merpeople, so they both started trying to think of solutions that might help. They traveled by train this morning to reduce pollution in the air, but water pollution was a different problem that they had not thought about before. Ricky realized that they needed to know more about the Mer Kingdom first to know how they could help. "Will you tell us more about your kingdom and the problems you're having?" Ricky asked curiously. "I can show you if you like," Celeste suggested. "Really?" gushed Suzie as she clapped her hands together. "We can come visit your kingdom." Suzie and Ricky were over the moon with excitement. They had never met a mermaid before, and now they were going to see where they lived too. Suzie knew this was going to be a great day, but not this great. "Yes, you can come and visit, but I'm already running late for this meeting, so we'll have to hurry." Suzie and Ricky jumped straight into the sea. Brrr, they both shuddered as the cold water splashed over them. It's so cold, they cried in unison as they started to tread water. How will we see your kingdom? Suzie trembled, now realizing it would probably be far underwater. I don't think I can hold my breath for that long, Ricky gurgled. Don't worry, us mer people have some solutions for that. Celeste reassured the children as she lifted them up out of the water to sit back on the side of the rock pool. Richie scratched his head and Susie's eyes narrowed. Celeste swam to a nearby rock pool, lifted herself up and ducked her head into the pool right up to her waist. Seconds later, she was resurfaced, holding a bunch of seaweed and what looked like 2 astronaut helmets. I have other human friends that come to visit, shared Celeste. These will keep you warm, said Celeste, gesturing to the seaweed. At first the children were confused, but the seaweed turned out to be 2 seaweed cloaks, which Celeste helped the children put on. To their surprise, they started to feel dry and a lot warmer, even though the blankets were still wet on the outside. Then Celeste offered the helmets to the children. Put this over your head like you would a bicycle helmet. This bubble helmet will produce oxygen and help you to breathe underwater. Wow, both children exclaimed as their eyes widened in awe. Then they jumped back into the water wearing their seaweed cloaks and bubble helmets just as the grey seal reappeared. I'm so sorry, Billy, Celeste apologized. Will you help me get Suzie and Ricky to the meeting? Sure, but you know Adamaris will not be happy about it, Billy cautioned Celeste with a cheeky chuckle. It's a pleasure to meet you both. I'm Billy, he said whilst bowing and giving them a royal wave with his flipper. Celeste rolled her eyes. I'll handle Adamaris. I'm afraid we need to get to this meeting quickly. So Suzie, you'll have to piggyback on me and Ricky, you can climb onto Billy. The children immediately did as they were told, and soon enough they were flying through the water so fast they could barely make out the sea life as they passed it.
Thanks, Lizzie. That was fantastic. I can't wait to see what happens to Suzie and Ricky next and find out where Billy and Celeste are taking them. So one thing I've noticed in the 2 books you've written is how you introduce lots of different types of engineers and they do lots of different things in the books. So what inspired you to write these books?
Together with the Women in Engineering Society at the University of Sheffield, we wanted to help solve the problem of there being a shortage of engineers in our society. So we did some research and we found out that between the ages of 10 to 14 is when young children tend to decide whether they like science and maths, and then that prevents them from choosing to continue to pursue science and maths later. And we thought maybe part of this problem is because they don't actually know what an engineer is or what an engineer does. There's lots of misconceptions about what engineering is in the first place, but also when children are young, you hear them say, I want to be a policeman or a fireman or a ballerina or a football player, a doctor, a nurse, but you never hear that they want to be an engineer. You might hear them say, oh, I want to be a scientist, but not an engineer. So we thought maybe that was part of the problem. So we thought we'd introduce kids to what engineering is and the amazing opportunities and range of careers that it could offer.
That's great. I think sometimes people don't realise how much design and creative skills are involved in engineering and what an interesting job it can be. So some of our local young people had a sneak preview of your book and have been able to listen to you reading that chapter, and they'd like to ask you some questions as well.
How long does plastic last when it is thrown into the ocean?
Thanks, Matty. That's a great question. Why is it bad to have plastic in the ocean? Well, that's because it's a bit like when you litter on land, except it's in the water. And because the water goes all around the earth, it can actually end up anywhere. And it just goes on and on and on and doesn't get filtered out. So what really happens is that the plastic gets broken down into smaller and smaller pieces, but it doesn't actually degrade. It can take up to 1,000 years to degrade plastic. And so what happens is that little microorganisms, if they're really tiny, or fish eat the plastic thinking that it's food, and then that can cause them problems and diseases and make them sick because the chemicals that are in plastic end up being broken down and come out into the body of the animals. And then what happens is that when we eat the fish, we end up eating those chemicals, and that's really bad for us too. So it's not just a problem that it's dirty and it makes the ocean not look very nice, but actually it ends up killing a lot of animals, and then in the end it harms us as well.
My name's Ted and I go to Markcliffe Primary School.
And what would you like to ask Lizzie about her book?
It says in here, in chapter 1, Susie's mum tells Suzie that they shouldn't go to the beach by car because the car releases nasty gases. Why are these gases so bad for the environment?
Well, gases from cars are pretty nasty, and they make the air really congested, and it can cause a lot of problems. I think maybe especially with COVID-19, you've probably seen in the news that the air is so much cleaner because there's not that many cars around. And so actually, if we use the opportunity to use cars less and try to use other modes of transport, such as trains and buses, that we could all use together, it would actually be a lot better for the environment. So then all these nasty gases aren't put in the air, and so they don't harm us, but also harm the earth. So it doesn't harm the atmosphere that surrounds the earth, because what it does is that it can poke little holes in the atmosphere, and then it lets harmful things in, and then it makes the earth heat up, and that's part of what contributes to global warming or climate change.
I also have a question that was written in by a student from Westway School called Leela. And Leela said she especially liked the part in chapter 6 where they make plastic bricks. This is the robot that puts a plastic bag into a special machine and turns it into a brick to be reused. So Leela said, is it actually possible to do that now? And if not, might it be possible to do that in the future?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. And wouldn't it be great if we could recycle plastic into blocks? Well, at the moment, you can actually create a composite, which is what we talk about in the book as well, is where you take different materials and combine them together to use the advantages of both materials. So the great thing about plastic is that you can form it into lots of shapes, and it's really durable and it lasts a long time. So that's why when people are creating products that use plastic, they should consider the whole life cycle of the plastic. So what happens to it after? And part of that can be that they can use it to be recycled and made into other things like the plastic blocks. So this could be combined with sand and can be made into recycled blocks. Another way is to reuse plastic, and that can be extending the life of that plastic. So because plastic is so durable, it's actually much better to use for things that are going to last longer. For example, there are plastic bricks you probably already use, most famously through Lego, which is a great product, but instead of using them and then throwing them away, you could maybe keep them and pass them down to your children or your children's children, give them to friends, family. So then that way we're not just using something and then throwing it away. A bit like how we use plastic bottles. If we only use it once and then throw it away, that's a really expensive use of that plastic. It'd be much better to get a thicker plastic and that one that you reuse again and again, and that would be a much better use.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for your questions. And if anyone watching this video has questions, you can use our comments section. And if you'd like to read the rest of the book, do click on the link below. So we'd like to thank our Women in Engineering Society for creating the book. And we'd like to thank a local engineering company based in Rotherham called AES Seal, who helped sponsor this book and sponsor the Engineering Imagination event. There's other things you can look at as a taste of engineering imagination. We're showing you how we're trying to be involved in helping people in the COVID pandemic by 3D printing special protective face shields. And we've also got an Ask an Engineer where you can find out more about engineering and what kind of job it could be. And we've got some information about how to do a mechanical test yourself. So if you want to see how strong something is, such as your favourite food, Amanda's going to show you how to look at that. And our Women in Engineering Society are going to show you some origami engineering. So lots of things to look forward to, and do please think about engineering and all the great engineering going on in Sheffield and how you might like to learn more about engineering in the future. Bye.